Good afternoon, everybody. We'll get started here just in a few minutes, and just give us a few more moments as we just have some final preparations. Okay, yeah. We'd like to welcome everybody to the November COPRI quarterly meeting. My name is Joseph Scarborough, and I'm the committee chair for the Texas chapter of COPRI. And as you can imagine, we are all adjusting to hosting these meetings virtually, so please be patient with us as we use GoToWebinar. Please be rest assured that we have taken the time to have a practice session with using GoToWebinar in an effort to have a smooth meeting for our presenters and our audience. As with all virtual platforms, there always seems to be some sort of hiccups from time to time. The local ASCE branch here in Houston has allowed us to use their GoToWebinar platform for our meetings. We'd like to thank the branch for letting us use their platform. You will notice under the handout section, you can view the agenda for today's meeting. I would like to recognize the executive committee for their hard work in making this meeting happen for the chapter. Before we get started with the presentations, I would like to review how the Q&A sessions will work. Once the presentation is complete, the audience will be allowed to send in questions using the questions dialog box on the right side of your screen. The moderator for each presentation will read the questions aloud, and then the presenter will answer the question. We have allowed for about 5 to 10 minutes for Q&A. If we need to move on to keep schedule, we will reserve time for additional questions at the end of the webinar. So if you did not get your question answered, please write it down, your question, and ask at the end of the webinar. We want to make sure we get all questions answered. And with that, we'll get the presentation started, and I will hand things off to Philip Blackmore, who will introduce our first speaker.
Great, thanks, Joseph. Yeah, my name is Philip Blackmore. I'm one of the executive committee members, and thank y'all for joining us today. I think we've got some really interesting presentations. The first of which is going to be a presentation on San Jose Island Beach and Dune Nourishment Project, Phase 1. It's going to be presented by Adam Sisson. Mr. Sisson graduated Stevens Institute of Technology in Hoboken, New Jersey in 2019 with a bachelor's in civil engineering and a master's in ocean engineering with a concentration in coastal engineering. Shortly after graduation, he began work at AECOM. In the year and a half since graduating, he has worked on major channel deepening projects, focusing on the Houston Ship Channel and Corpus Christi Ship Channel. His main role on these projects has been to assist in designing placement areas for the dredge material produced by the deepening effort. And with that, I'm going to hand things over. Just give me a second to allow Adam to share his screen, and we'll get started with this presentation.
Okay, so my screen should be shared. And today, as just mentioned, I will be presenting about the San Jose Island Beach Nourishment Project and the preliminary design that we have and work we have done so far. We will begin with a brief overview of what we will be presenting today. We will start with a project background, an overview, including an overview of the project, site history, the impacts of Hurricane Harvey on this stretch of beach, as that was one of the main events driving the erosion on this beach. And then we will focus a bit on the project benefits. After that, we will discuss the survey work that has been done up to this point, which includes both geotechnical survey as well as bathymetric survey. Then we will discuss the preliminary design and what the future considerations are as we move forward with this project. And for the project overview, there has been no previous nourishment work done on San Jose Island, and the entirety of the island is privately owned. The material that will be used for this nourishment project is sourced from the Corpus Christi Ship Channel Deepening Project. It is intended as a beneficial use from that deepening project. And the overall project that this material is coming from is the deepening of the ship channel from the existing 56 feet mean low water to -75 feet, mean low water for the inshore depth, and -77 feet, mean low water for the offshore depth. There are other design placement areas that could be used, such as a ODMDS offshore, some feeder berms, and potentially other placement areas within the bay. And keep in mind that during this presentation, the design is still ongoing, and this is just preliminary. And as you can see on the picture of the left, the extent of where the intended nourishment is. And now a brief history of the site. As you can see on the leftmost picture, that was taken from April 2017, pre-Hurricane Harvey. As you can see, there are no major washouts on the beach, and it's pretty consistent beach all the way along the site. And then a picture was taken immediately post-Harvey. And from this picture, there is major washout and breaches throughout a large portion of what is shown in the picture. And then post-Harvey, a more recent photo, you can see there has been some natural recovery, but there is still major washout that needs to be repaired due to the damage by Harvey. And here is a more detailed view of the damage that was caused by Hurricane Harvey. As you can see, the dune was breached all the way through and created washouts in those two sections. And this is just a closer view, so you can see the extent better as you could with just a larger aerial photo. And there's major nourishment work that needs to be done to repair that damage. Additionally, there are some other benefits. As San Jose Island, while it is undeveloped, it does provide protection for the critical habitat that is located directly behind the beach on San Jose Island, as well as providing the first line of protection for some submerged aquatic vegetation, as well as other critical habitat that is in Redfish Bay behind the island. So that island will give some more protection to there. And now we will move on to survey work that has been performed. Starting off with the geotechnical survey work, there have been 22 boreholes representing approximately 16.6 million cubic yards of material. And for each of these boreholes, we looked at a grain size distribution as well as a soil classification at multiple different depths. And this was done to determine whether or not the material was suitable for the beach. And in order for it to be viewed as material that could potentially be placed on the beach, it had to be classified as sand, have a similar grain size distribution to the selected site, and have no contaminants or shell hash. And of that 6.6 million, we found that approximately 5.5 million cubic yards of material met this criteria and could be placed on the beach. And below in the table, you see actually comparing the mean grain sizes of the proposed placement material as well as to the native material on San Jose Island. And as you can see, they are slightly larger on average. And this is okay because if it's a bit larger, you get more cohesion between the borrowed material and the existing material, which is beneficial to your beach nourishment project. Although the mean grain size was not the only thing we looked at when determining whether or not the grain sizes would work, we actually looked at the entire grain size distribution. And on this slide is a sample of what was done for each borehole. And as you can see, the red line was taken at a depth of 11.5 feet, and that sample was classified as sand and falls relatively well within the existing grain size envelope. So that section of material would qualify as being able to be placed on the beach. The second line, the green line, while it does line up within the envelope for the existing material, that is classified as a silty, as more clay, so it does not meet the grain size distribution, and we should not want it on the beach. The farthest one is the yellow line, that while it is classified as sand, in that sample there was actually some shell hash in there, so that pushed it outside of the grain size distribution. So that is not something we would be looking to place on directly on the beach. And then the bathymetric survey work, there were 6 surveys done by 4 different agencies over the course of 18 years. The most recent was we had done by Naismith in June of 2019. And then there were 2009, 2016, and 2017 surveys done by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, as well as a 2006 survey by Port Aransas and a 2001 survey by the U.S. Geological Service. And these were done to determine the design templates along the beach. And the entirety of these surveys were just over 18 miles, and there was about 1 every 200 feet or so. Keep in mind, we do not have all 6 of these surveys over that entire distance, but we have at least 1 survey from one of these agencies over that distance. And as you can see from the survey on the right, the elevation of the beach drops shoreward after Hurricane Harvey, which implies that this section, it looks like there was a breach and some major erosion of the dune. So that's something that we'd look into when we are determining our design templates. And now on to the preliminary design. We developed a few typical sections. And in each typical section, you will see 2 profiles, a construction profile and a design or equilibrium profile. And we have 3 typical sections. We have one where there is a need for dune restoration, another where the beach was breached and the beach need to be restored, that breach, restore the dune, and then build out the beach seaward of that dune. And then there are sections of no dune. So the first section is where we have the dune. And as you can see in the black lines, that it is the construction profile. And this profile is smooth lines that have a consistent slope, as this is easier to construct. And you see the equilibrium template in the light blue line, and that line was determined by taking the average of the existing profiles along our survey and essentially pushing that out by the distance that we were extending the beach. So it's just the existing profile pushed out, and that is how that was developed. And as you can see in this one, the dune is being restored between 10 to 200 feet, depending on how much damage was done to that dune. In this next section, the entire dune was washed out and the beach was breached. And now you can see the fill goes much farther back than in the previous section. And we are restoring that dune and building up on 200 feet of dune and then extending out about 400 feet of beach before getting into that sloping construction template. And the equilibrium profile is shown in this again and was determined again by pushing the existing profile. And now on this one, there is no dune that needs to be restored. So this is the simplest one, and we are just restoring the beach out. And this beach is shown here is very similar to the beach sections that were shown for the previous two profiles. And now, as we're going through and constructing these, there are a few things that we need to consider that will potentially have an impact on what the effects of this project is. We need to look at the quality of sand that we are placing on the beach. The better the existing sand and the placement sand are similar, the more similar they are to each other, the better it will be. Potential disruptions of seasonal recruitment for any benthic populations or microorganisms that are living in that section of the beach. The size of the project, looking at how large our project footprint is and how much of the beach we are impacting, as well as our placement techniques, depending on whether we are placing it from the land side or from the seaside and placing it over water versus placing it over land. And we expect to take about 12 to 18 months for the system to reach that equilibrium profile that was shown. And the next steps is an ongoing permitting effort, coordinating with stakeholders, including the landowner, to get permission to place material on there, some wetland delineations that needs to be done, as well as finalizing the design of the project. Thank you for your time today. And are there any questions?
Adam, thanks so much for that presentation. That's really interesting. At this time, I'm not showing any questions. I do have a question in the meantime while we're waiting to see if any come through. I think you mentioned that the beach over on San Jose Island is private property. Have you all begun coordination with the property owners over there? Are they receptive to the project?
Yes, we are coordinating with them and working to see what they're more concerned about, what the effects will be, because we're essentially placing it on their beach, and they somewhat, that coordination is ongoing.
Great. All right. Well, again, if anybody else has questions, you can use the questions box on the GoTo webinar. We'll give it another moment here, and if nothing comes through, we do have one coming through, Adam. So, what would be the funding setup for this project, considering public funds versus private beaches?
The funding, it is part of the channel deepening. So the funding would be coming from largely from the port, as it's their project, and they would be placing the sand on that beach.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that question. And again, even if you have some questions that come to mind during this next presentation, please feel free to enter them in that question box. Just clarify that you're referencing this first presentation, and Adam's planning to be on through the remainder of our meeting here, so he'd be happy to respond after the next presentation if we do get any of those questions. But with that, I think we'll move on to our next presentation. And that's a presentation on study on causes of Port Arthur dredging. This is going to be presented by Jennifer Galindo and Dr. Qian. And so I've got an introduction here for Dr. Qian. Dr. Qian is currently an associate professor of Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Lamar University in Beaumont, Texas. She joined the Lamar University in 2008, immediately after completing her PhD study in civil engineering at the University of Minnesota. Her research areas are in hydrology, hydraulics, and water resource engineering, with funded research projects from the National Science Foundation, National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, U.S. Department of Agriculture, Texas Department of Transportation, Texas General Land Office, Sabine Neches Waterway District, and internal findings from Lamar University. Dr. Qian teaches 3 to 4 undergraduate classes and 2 graduate classes every year. She won James M. Robbins Excellence in Teaching Award from Chi Epsilon, Southwest District, ASCE Fellow of Excellence in Civil Engineering Education, and received University Merit Award for Outstanding Young Professor, and Research Fellow for Outstanding Research in College of Engineering from Lamar University. Dr. Qian is a member of the American Society of Civil Engineers, American Geophysical Union, Chi Epsilon Honor Society of ASCE, Chinese American Water Resources Association, Overseas Chinese Environmental Engineers and Scientists Association, and has served as president of the Overseas Chinese Environmental Engineers and Scientists Association. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Qian. If you just give me a second here to get the screen set up. Oh, there we go. All right, and the floor is all y'all's.
Thank you. So for today's presentation, we're gonna talk about study on the causes of Port Arthur dredging. We're gonna present my graduate student Jennifer Galindo gonna present with me. Port Arthur is one of the North American transport facility. It's located 19 miles inland from Gulf of Mexico. We visit this port 2 weeks ago. From the picture on the right side here is the north part of the port. They expand their dock on the north portion, and the picture on the right side is the south port of their port. This is very busy actually facility here. So you can see next picture, Jennifer, please. this is in the middle of their duct. You can see that on the right side here, the bank on the eastern side, they have some erosions that small trees or bushes are covered with. They have slow erosion on this side caused by the wake wash. So they need dredging every 6 months. Go ahead, Jennifer. We look at the problem around the side. I think that we think the sediment load caused either from the bank erosion due to the wake wash or possible from the channel due to flow condition change. So the objective for this study, we wanted to investigate the sediment load and to better understand the sediment transport mechanics. So we start with the analysis with GIS data for the cross-section change. Go next page, please, Jennifer. So we calculate the cross-section area at different time, use GIS data to try to calculate the flow area reduction with the time. Then we also look at the flow data to try to figure out the flow condition in the waterway at the station, but also from NOAA website. Then we combine the volume change, area reduction change with this flow condition to see what the main cause in the flow condition for the sediment load in this part of the waterway. We also combine their dredging events, try to calculate the siltation rates along with the time to see what is the main effect to the sediment transport in this part of the waterway. Now I'm gonna turn into Jennifer for the results.
Thank you, Dr. Qian. These figures are hydrographic surveys that were provided by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The datum used in the area is mean lower low water. The figures are both dated from different time periods, 2018 and 2020. They show how the depth is changing with time. As you can see in the top figure, there is more darker blue, meaning it is deeper, and in the bottom figure, you can see how there are more lighter colors along the docks, indicating that siltation is occurring. To see the elevation change over the years, we used ArcGIS to convert the contour line shape files into raster files. There are 4 stations in front of the docks. However, we selected these 2 locations as shown in the figure, Station 150 and Station 130, since they showed the most dynamic cross-sectional change over time. An animation will be demonstrated for these locations. Using the raster files, we were able to cut our own cross-section using the 3D Analyst tool. One was cut for each of the 6-month time period and graphed. Below are the cross-sections for Station 150. Here is an animation of the cross-sections at Station 150 showing how they are changing over time. And here are the cross-sections for Station 130, along with the animation. Okay, once a cross-section was cut at all the stations in front of the docks, the data was collected and inputted into an Excel spreadsheet. Here, we were able to calculate the area at each station and calculate a percent reduction. Each data is listed for the recorded dates along with a graph of the cross-section. The percent reduction shows how much siltation or dredging occurred between the time intervals. So you can see how the area is increasing or decreasing on the graphs. The reduction rates are graphed below for all stations. A positive value signifies siltation occurring, while a negative value signifies dredging occurring. Dredging dates were provided and are displayed as the vertical black lines. You can notice when the dredging events happened. After calculating the flow area at each station, a total volume was found and graphed to see the flow volume change with time. The flow volume change was calculated between stations by using the average area times the distance between the stations. The water depth data that was collected from the NOAA website was used to identify flow conditions. As you can see in the graph, a drought happened in 2014-2015. Hurricane Harvey and Imelda were also labeled. Dredging events were put in this graph to see the relationship between the flow volume and dredging data. After every dredging event, notice how the flow volume increased. A drought causes high sedimentation load because of the capacity of the water having a small flow rate, causing a decrease in the sediment movement. With flood events such as Hurricane Harvey and Imelda having a high flow rate, these also caused a high sedimentation load. To compare the siltation rates, we only use the dredging events that corresponded with the given GIS data, which is why we only have 4 dates in this graph. Using the flow volumes from the previous slide, a rate was calculated to see how much siltation occurred per day during the dredging events. It was compared to the actual siltation rate to see how accurate our calculations were. The first 3 dates seemed to be fairly close, but the last date was not. We might need to add more cross sections in between to calculate a better flow volume to get a better rate estimation.
Okay, so this is I wanted to present for the wickwash effect. We had a previous study about half-mile downstream of the port of Port Arthur. Over that side, we have a bank which has all the soil open to is open, so we'll be able to take all the soil sample around that. That's part of the waterway. Then we also installed instrument which can measure the wave height caused by vessel. So we had the wake wash data, and we also have the soil data, and we did the B-stem model for that part of the waterway. We found if there's no protect measures installed, then the bank is going to be very easy to erode. Then if we apply with the soil data and the wave data and flow data, we developed a B-stem model. If we have the large water debris installed on the bank or on the toe, it can complete to prevent erosion from the wake wash. So with this data, compared to the field situation in this part of the waterway, there are small trees around those banks. So that's why the erosion caused by the wake wash is not dominant in this side. Then the question to us is, next slide, please. Jennifer, next slide. So our conclusion from all the investigation now, the main cause is the erosion for the sediment in this part of the waterway is mainly because of flow condition changed. Either is flow high flow rate or low flow rate, it can cause the sediment deposition in this part of the waterway. So the ongoing study, we try to first to get the bathymetrical data, which can cover the whole river, include the channel and on the both sides of the channel, from the eastern bank to the western bank. Then we already have all the sediment grain size distribution analysis for this part of the waterway, and we are collecting data for flow rate and sediment load for model development. We plan to develop a HACROS model first, because that's a 1D models to simulate when flow, especially to a high flow rate, to demonstrate the flood condition. Then for the small flow rate or the more lateral change, the sediment load, we plan to develop a 3D hydrodynamic and transport model. Use the general lateral and the vertical numerical model to estimate sediment load, which consider the tide in a river. So then we can compare those two models to figure out what is how the flow rate can change sediment loading in this part of the waterway. That's all. Thank you for your attention. Any questions?
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Qian and Jennifer, for that presentation. Still waiting to see if any questions come in through the question box. Again, for any of the attendees today, if you do have a question, there's the question box there on the GoToWebinar, and you can type it in there and we'll make sure that we get it answered. While we're waiting, I'll ask a question real quick. I'm sure that the port is really interested in this work that y'all are doing. Are y'all collaborating with them to see how they can apply this information to their operations and planning?
Yes, exactly. Yes, that's all. They are collecting the bathymetric data for us. They already scheduled with the survey company. So we hope we get the bathymetric data soon. Then in collaborate with the study we had before. So we have all the, we measured wave data, which is caused by vessel when the vessel passing through. So that data can be corroborated when we develop our 3D model. We hope to figure out the pattern, the sediment transfer pattern in this part of the waterway under different conditions, and can provide some idea for them to operate their system better.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure this is really useful in research. I know there's a lot of work going on in all the ports along Texas. So continuing to get a better understanding of all of the future maintenance dredging that'll be required is definitely a hot topic for those groups. We did have a question roll through from Chris Weber. And so he's asking, is there any consideration in your studies for possible dredge volumes or potential placement areas?
Good question. They have their placement area. I think Ed told me is somewhere upstream. They have to dredging their sediment and placed in certain area. So certain placement. It was upstream. It's kind of far away from their port, I think. I think we can corroborate that when we have the model to figure out what location is more better for them to leave their dredging material. That's a very good question. It is always when they do the dredging activities, always question which dredging location or which placement location will be better. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. And Chris, if you've got any follow-ups, feel free to type them in there. At this time, I don't have any additional questions. It looks like Chris felt like he got his answer, so thank you. Okay, well, with that, I think we'll finish here with a few closing remarks. First of all, thank you everyone in attendance today. I know that COVID has made things a little more difficult for us to collaborate and network within our industry. So we've certainly seen the challenges there, but we've also opened up some new opportunities with increased webinars and things going on. So hopefully we can continue to capitalize on those opportunities and continue to collaborate amongst ourselves and network and keep things going. So, but again, we appreciate you for your attendance today and also for your involvement in the COPRI chapter. And also a big thank you to our presenters today. I know it's a significant time commitment to commit to these presentations and putting together the work and sharing everything, but we certainly appreciated learning about your projects and definitely appreciate that you took the time to do so. If you would like a PDH certificate, this is for any of the attendees today, please send an email to copri@ascehouston.org, and then we will send you a PDF certificate. Otherwise, we have our next quarterly meeting coming up on February 9th in 2021, getting closer to the new year. Otherwise, we're continuing to look at other opportunities to expand and have events with the Texas COPRI chapter. And we'll keep you updated on that as soon as anything comes out. So with that, we certainly appreciate everyone again, and hope you guys have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.